All right, looks like we have one more person that's logging on, and then we will get started. All right, so welcome. My name is Julie Reuter. I am the Community Corrections Representative for the IACTP. Also, my other position, my full-time position, I'm the Field Services Training Manager for the Wyoming Department of Corrections. But today, I will actually be your moderator, and I will be assisting with any IT questions. So if you have any issues, you can send me a private chat. You should see a chat bar to the right. And I'm actually listed as Courtney Hersig. If you have budgeted issues like we do in Wyoming, we only have one account, so I have to log in under that name. So if you need to ask me any questions, again, there's a chat bar to the right. Just click on message Courtney Hersig privately, and then I would be able to chat that, and it won't disrupt the class. I'd like to officially welcome you to the first IACTP webinar. Today we are covering 5 steps to a great presentation. A few housekeeping items. We ask that you mute your phone or your computer so we can alleviate background noise. I also have the power to manually mute you, so if you're having trouble with your phone and we hear some background noise, I may mute your phone. If you have any questions, we ask that you use the chat feature. Again, that should be to the right of the presentation that you're seeing right now. And if you have the questions, we'd ask that you, if there are questions about the training, we'd ask that you send them to everyone so everyone could see the question and everyone could see the answer. We also ask, please don't put your phone on hold. If you put us on hold, we sometimes will hear whatever background music noise if your company has that installed, so we would like to alleviate that. The training will be interactive, so if you'd like to answer a question, we ask that you raise your hand. To the right of the presentation, you should see the list of participants. And next to your name, there should be a hand. If you click that hand, it will indicate to us that you're raising your hand, and we'll call on you. You can unmute your phone and be able to answer a question. We will also be recording the WebEx today, so it is recording as of now. And so please be cognizant of what you are saying or typing. Reminder, the next webinar for IACTP will be on June 29th. That'll be 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and it will be Intentional Leadership in the 21st Century. You'll receive more information about registration prior to the session, but I just wanted to let you know when the next one was coming in case you wanted to jot it down on your calendar. Before I introduce our trainers, are there any questions, housekeeping items? Are there any questions or housekeeping items that I can help out with before we get into the formal presentation? All right, well, I'm pleased to welcome and introduce our trainers today. On the screen, you should be seeing their picture. On the left, we have Dawn Miller, who is our treasurer of the IACTP, and to the right is Mary O'Connor, who is the secretary of IACTP. Both of these fabulous ladies are curriculum managers with the Arizona Department of Corrections, and I will now kick it over to them, and they will let you know a little bit more about themselves. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for taking the time with this presentation.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate your help. I'm Dawn Miller, and Mary and I are happy to be here today, welcoming you guys from bright, sunny Phoenix, Arizona. I understand a few of you guys are battling snow. Sorry, not sorry. That's one of the beautiful things about having conferences in Arizona is our weather is always good. I have been with the Arizona Department of Corrections just over 28 years. The last 18 I've spent in training, and love my job, love what I do. This is one of our very first webinars, and I'm really excited to be here. So I'll be doing most of the talking today. Mary's going to be my lovely assistant managing chat, and she'll be chiming in when necessary. I'm going to let her introduce herself to you.
It's good morning still here, but probably afternoon for all of you folks. I'm Mary O'Connor, and once again, I've been with IACTP for 17 years, not as secretary, only like maybe 5 or 6 years as the secretary. But I'm real excited that we're finally starting to get our webinars off and running. It's been a sort of a hope for myself for a long time. Once again, I work with the Arizona Department of Corrections. I've been with the department not as long as Dawn. I've been only 22 years, all in training. I've been a facilitator, a writer, and everything. Right now, I do curriculum management, and I actually manage the LEAD program. Dawn and I both facilitate various levels of our leadership program that we have with the Arizona Department of Corrections. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Very good. All right, so the first thing I want to start with is I want to ask you guys, what are some problems that you've experienced or seen in presentations? Maybe it was a presentation that you attended or maybe one that you gave. What are some issues that you had during that presentation? Go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you and you can unmute yourself and we'll chat a little bit.
No.
Don't be shy.
There we go.
All right. How about Alyssa? Can you unmute your phone and
I guess sometimes when people ask questions, it kind of distracts me from where I was going, and then I lose my focus.
Ah, that's a good one. So we'll try to cover that today. How do you keep focus when people are asking questions? Very good. Any others? Okay, how about Ed? Ed had his hand raised earlier.
I think you have to unmute. There we go.
Whoa.
That's enough.
Ed, you have some background, like
an
feedback.
echo, a real bad echo.
So you want to try? Okay, yeah, Ed, could you type in the chat your experience? And I know I've had some experiences where, you know, like negativity has been a problem. You know, some of the things that kind of make you nervous to do a presentation is, you know, maybe it's a topic that people don't want to hear about, you know. Or like I said, you have some negativity in the class. That can always make you nervous going in, or something you're not real familiar with. Dawn, do you have any things that kind of have triggered you with being nervous about a presentation, gives you anxiety?
Yeah, I've had some of the tools that I'm using, the computer or the at one point we were using LCD projectors and the bulb burned out, and you know what I mean, different things like that that caused issues. And I needed to, if I would have checked the LCD prior to getting started, I would have known that the bulb was out. So it kind of held us up a little bit, but a lesson learned. That was definitely one of the things that I started doing right off the bat when I walked into the classroom. So
yeah, Stephanie typed in a really good point that an unmotivated instructor or facilitator, or they're unprepared. So they come into the class and you can just tell right from the beginning that they don't want to be there. What makes the class want to be there when that's the attitude that they have?
Absolutely.
So you're all bringing up some really good points about why, you know, presentations can fail, and it's our fault as the presenter. So with that,
I want to make sure, Ed, did you have something you wanted to say? Can you type it in chat since your microphone's not working real well on your phone?
I think he chatted to me that having terrible PowerPoints, unless he's talking about this and he can't see it, and he also said people using lectern.
Oh, people using podium. How about using the podium as a crutch or the lectern as a crutch? you can't get out from behind it and be interactive with people. That's a good point. And you know, sometimes that our presentations are so busy that it distracts, or it's so boring that it's like people don't even want to look at it. So all great reasons why presentations can fail.
Yeah, funny enough, we're going to cover quite a few of these today. So we'll go ahead and get started with the actual 5 steps of a good presentation, great presentation, okay? So a lot of times people think that when you're going to give a presentation that you need to be a stand-up comic or you need to be a great entertainer. Even though these things are nice, they're not necessary. There's actually 5 steps that we found that can help you take your presentation from good to great, okay? And the first one would be preparation. We're going to go into depth on each one of these as we move forward through our webinar today. Introduction and ground rules is really important. Attitude, I think Stephanie touched on that with the unmotivated instructor or facilitator. We're going to talk a little bit about interaction, and we're going to talk about controlling your class. What do they say, one bad apple, right? It can really, really mess up a presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about how to control that, okay? So for a presentation to be great, you need to be comfortable with the material. And we all get nervous. I've been instructing since I became a certified instructor with our agency in 1991. So that was a minute ago. And I still get really nervous, but I've learned to feed off of that energy. I take that energy and the adrenaline and I allow it to energize me, and then it in turn energizes the participants, makes them happy to be there. They see that I'm invested, they see that I'm motivated, and they get excited about what they're actually going to get out of this particular course. So energy coupled with solid preparation before your presentation is key to starting out on the right foot. So first you want to review the lesson plan, okay? If it's something that you haven't taught before, it's really, really important to do that. What are your thoughts or techniques that you use to review? If you guys want to fill us in and, you know, share with us what you do to review. Have any of you actually had something just thrown at you and said, here, the instructor's not here, or can you do this? How did you prepare for that?
If you want to raise your hand, then we can have you speak.
I know that it's happened to me often where I know that it's happened to me often where the presentation is just like I mentioned, an instructor doesn't show up. So a lot of times what I'll do is when I'm reviewing the lesson plan, I look at the activities first, and then I'll go to the outline and see how I can, you know, I feel like if I know the activities and I know the outline, the rest of the stuff kind of falls into place. But who did you say?
Alyssa, you had your hand up.
Okay, Alyssa, go ahead and unmute and talk to us.
Well, I just did a preparation, or I guess a presentation yesterday, and they switched it up on me and had it kind of be over the phone and a phone and in person. So that made it a little nerve-wracking, and I was worried that I wouldn't know all my material. So I literally just read it over and over and over and made notes and then made more notes and then made more notes. So, I mean, at some point I probably should have stopped reading it just because I was so nervous. But it really helped when I got up there because I was like, oh, yeah, I have that note. Make sure to say that. So that was really helpful.
And that's that's actually one of the techniques that we suggest, is that you take that guide and then you make it your own by putting the notes on the side. You know, the little anecdote or the story you're going to tell that relates it and brings it on home. Areas where you may have problems that you know you've kind of questioned, make sure I tell them this, you know, to clarify a step or whatever. So that's a very good point. Reading it over and over.
Okay. So another thing that you can do is you can share personal anecdotes or examples to make a point or show relevance. It also helps kind of build your credibility when you can take the information that you're working with and help participants apply it to their job, okay?
One of the things I always like to do, too, is I kind of imagine teaching it, you know, not just read through it. I, like in my head, go through it, and I sometimes do it without the lesson plan. I know I want to get this through. These are the things I know this is going to come up, so I kind of run it in my head over and over so that you know what it's going to look like when you actually are in front of the class. You've run it, you've taught the class in your head a million times now.
It's kind of like a muscle memory kind of thing. You do it over and over again until it becomes second nature. Kind of like what Alyssa was saying. She reads it over and over again. Mary does the same thing, whether it's in front of a mirror or her children or her dog. She has dress rehearsals. Yeah, exactly. So, anything else? Anybody want to share? Do we have any hands up? Oh, no? Okay. So whatever technique you use to review the material, the more comfortable you are, the better your presentation is going to be. Makes sense, right? You won't just have to use the material as a script. It's more like an outline, a guide, rather than reading. Nobody likes to be read to over and over again. The next one we're going to talk about is equipment, and this is what I brought up a little bit earlier. You need to make sure all your equipment works. I told you about the LCD where the projector, the LCD burned out. Thank goodness we don't use those anymore, but that was an issue in my situation. So are there any other examples? Mary, do you have any examples about equipment not working?
Well, you know, we have a variety of functional levels, you might say, with broad bandwidth in our institutions, and sometimes you have where if you want to do something maybe over the internet, you can't run a YouTube video. You have to make sure everything works at whatever location, because for some reason a video might work at this place. If you didn't try it beforehand, you don't want to find out when a pivotal portion of your program all of a sudden isn't working. Mm-hmm. So we kind of learned that in the hard way, if you will. But those are things. What if you find out the computer you're running on doesn't have the same software, like you're on Word 10 and they're on Word 93? You know, that can cause huge problems with your PowerPoint. So it's real important that you go in and test it out beforehand. Your speakers aren't connected. You know, the list goes on and on of things that you really need to test everything prior to. One of the things we did is we tested last week doing this webinar because, you know, Julie's gracious enough to host it, but our facility didn't have the WebEx to run it, so we had to practice that to make sure we could get on. And even this morning, it took us a little while. We had to have IT right there to do it. So you always want to be prepared beforehand so that you don't all of a sudden go, oh, how come the instructors don't have, you know, we're not up and running, and we have to cancel something because if your program doesn't work, what can you do?
It's always important to have a backup plan. So in the situation where the LCD bulb burned out, I just moved forward and realized I wasn't going to have the presentation behind me for an aid, so I became a little bit more animated, walked around the room a little bit more, had the lesson plan in my hand, and was basically had to do a little bit more of a song and dance. I made sure that everybody had their workbooks out and they were looking at their workbooks. So it took a little bit of time on my part. In a situation where the speakers go out, if you happen to know who the training officer is, or if you are the training officer and you happen to have an assistant, maybe you can have them run and get you another set of speakers and get that set up while you continue with the class. Not quite sure how you guys do your classes out in your field, but we're usually on a pretty tight schedule. If we have a 2-hour class, it starts at 8 o'clock, it's over at 10, and at 10 o'clock another class starts. So there's not a whole lot of time for, you know, mistakes like that. So we have to kind of keep the ball rolling as much as possible, and then if they come in with the speakers, cool, we'll hook them up and we'll get going. So you always have to have a backup plan, okay? So as we talk about making sure that everything works, what are some examples in your area? I don't know how you've got things, you know, working at, what do you do to make sure that everything is going ahead of time? Like Mary said earlier, we did kind of last week we got together, earlier this morning we got together again, making sure that everything is in working order. Do you guys do dress rehearsals like that when you have a big presentation coming up? And I call it dress rehearsals because, okay, oh. Ed's there. What you got, Ed?
Stephanie's always.
Always do dress rehearsals.
I would capitalize that too.
Right. Ed, can you unmute yourself or is Ed?
No.
I don't know what happened to Ed. Is Ed typing to you, Julie?
All right.
No, I don't see him typing.
Okay.
Practicing with co-facilitators is also very important. It's good to know what the, you know, you don't want to jump over each other, and you want to know, like, there might be a section that you feel more comfortable teaching than the other person, et cetera. So you want to go through that prior to.
I always make sure that when I have a co-facilitator too, that we understand the cues of each other when someone else wants to say something. So if I'm in a classroom and I'm co-facilitating and my other co-instructor is sitting down, if they have something to say, they stand up. So when I know that when they just quietly stand up, I'll say, do you have something to add? Mary and I right now have our own behind-the-scenes deal going on that if she has something to say, she gives me the signal, and then boom, I know that she has something to say. Because it's terrible in class when the instructors are talking all over each other. It's a little chaotic, and it can really cause problems in a classroom. So yes, definitely rehearsing and working together. Ed, what does that say?
You never do dress rehearsal.
Ed goes right out there and does it. Good job, Ed. That scares me, I got to be honest with you. So I'm guessing, Ed, that you have a backup plan in case something does go wrong?
Oh, have no choice. You know what, and that brings up a good point. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like Dawn said earlier, if you get thrown something at the last minute, how are you going to know something's not working?
Right.
When you go in. I remember I've been involved in some trainings where you're not in the best facility. You know, it's the third class of a day or the third different session that's running at the same place. So you get the closet over in the corner with whoever you have, and sometimes those aren't the best situations, but you're trying to get all the training completed that may be in not the best of circumstances, but you know you're asked to do it, so you do what you have to do. And like Ed says, hey, you don't have a choice.
You know, another thing that we do when we roll out our new training is we have really good, strong training for trainers. So we bring all of our training officers and all of their instructors together in one place, and our writers, our curriculum writers, teach the trainers how those classes should be taught. And that really helps a lot to prepare those instructors for when we send our training out into the field with them. So that's one thing that we do.
And that kind of goes right into our next section that we have in preparation is presentation. You know, kind of like reviewing the lesson plan. Sometimes it's nice to see it before you have to present it. So if you can have a train the trainer, or if you could just know that you've sat through it before so you feel more comfortable with it.
Right. Another thing that you need to do, you know, we talked a little bit about how different computers in different areas have different programs. Like I may have made this PowerPoint using the most current version, but out in the field they may have a version that's 3 years older. So you got to, one of the biggest problems is videos. When you move a program, you know, a presentation from one area to another, sometimes you lose that path to the video, and a lot of complaints come back that the videos don't work when really all they need to do is be re-embedded. So that can cause a problem too. That was my...
Okay.
Okay.
So.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. Room temperature. I know this doesn't sound like a big deal, but it can really turn into a big deal. Do you guys have any examples? I mean, we can give you some crazy Arizona horror stories about room temperature. Ed, what you got?
Can we get him on, Julie?
I don't show he has anything. I'll keep chatting him. He
Okay.
says to keep him cold, probably keep him awake.
Yeah.
If you keep it cool, it keeps them awake.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny. Recently, you know, we do get some cold air in Arizona. I was going to a training that was being held in a warehouse, and it was around 30 degrees outside.
Which is bikini weather for Wyoming, but
for
down
us,
here
it's, you know,
we're
like parka weather. So it was like 30 degrees outside, unusual for me. And inside the building, they had ran the heater overnight, but they turned it off because at this warehouse it was so loud you couldn't hear the presenter. So with the door opening throughout the day and the temperature being so low, I'm sitting there in my big heavy down coat and gloves on, trying to figure out how to get cold and wishing I had a beanie like everybody else had in the class. I spent more time thinking about how cold I was and how could I get warm than what the presenter was doing. I actually wished I was the presenter because walking around would have given me some body heat or something. So
all of our classes have air conditioning, and there are people who think they need to mess with the thermostat and knock it down to about 60 degrees in the classroom. And these little distractions can really wreak havoc with your presentation. If you've got people that are naturally cold and didn't bring a sweater, or people who are unusually warm and are getting, you know, they're going to be the ones that go and mess with the thermostat. So the best way to do that is delegate someone to be in charge of the temperature and make sure that they understand that, you know, nobody needs to play with the thermostat. It's thermostat wars at its worst, honestly. So making sure that you have a nice room temperature is always a good thing, whatever is good for your area.
Alyssa brings up a good point. Yeah, Alyssa brought up a point that, you know, kind of tell people that, you know, layer up, because it's easier to take off a layer than it is to warm up if you didn't come prepared. So if you tell them to bring a light sweater, etc., because, you know, there are people that even in Arizona wear sweaters in the summer, and it's 120 out. That's not the person you want regulating the room.
True.
You know, and you don't want this instructor either, because you know, you're excited, you know, you get cool, you get warmed by the projector, you know, all the different equipment that's around you gives heat. You're exercising and working up heat. So you're not the one that's going to be cold first, is the instructor usually. So good point, telling them to bring jackets beforehand.
Absolutely. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the instructor area. I think it was Ed that mentioned the podium and people who stay behind the podium and basically hug the podium throughout the entire presentation. You want to make sure that your area is organized. If you're a team teaching, be aware of your other instructors, where your other instructor is at all times, so you're not bumbling around, bumping into each other. You're going to make sure that you have everything that you need throughout the course right there within arm's reach. And it just makes you feel more comfortable knowing where everything is. And a special note here, you don't want to forget your roster or your evaluation sheet, because that's when the class ends and you know that people haven't signed their roster, they're ready to get out of there. And so a lot of times people will get out without signing their roster.
They don't want to come back either, so.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the next thing we're going to talk about is seating. Seating is pretty important, the way your classrooms are set up. Traditionally, classrooms have been set up with rows of desks and tables and chairs facing the front. Depending on how big your classes are, you can have anywhere from 4 to 10, rows of participants. I think it's important to mix people up. A lot of times people come in and they sit with their friends, they sit with their buddies, and you run the risk there of bad attitudes spreading throughout, or the constant sidebar conversations, so you want to make sure that you mix people up and move them around. When we do our LEAD program, we actually, with our leadership program, we actually set people up prior to them even coming in. We put them in groups and ensure that there's one person from each area in that group. So we may have one person from security, we might have one person from programs, maybe another one from maintenance, maybe another one from community corrections, so that they get a wide variety when it comes to networking and discussing different topics. So what are some ways that you have arranged people in your classes? Go ahead and raise your hand if you want to share. Ed, is your hand still up or is it up again?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, so do you guys have any ways that you arrange people in your classes?
Rounds or chevron shape. That's a good one. That's what Ed offered that.
You mean like the tables?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Tables
okay.
or rounds or chevrons. So kind of the chevron, and we're actually going to show that in a short while, the chevron type shaped classroom style.
I remember going to a seminar. It was at the ATD conference, and they had table rounds, and we've never done that here in Arizona, and I thought, wow, this is like a banquet hall, but it was probably the most interactive training I've been to. It was really good. I liked it, the way that they shook it up and had us get up and move around and talk to each other at different tables.
Alyssa says they do table blocks,
okay.
which is yeah, we have some examples. We have, let's see, Julie has, we have week-long training, and we have staff change seats during the week. And that's another technique, is mix them up so that they don't always, start, you want to network, but you don't want them to get so comfortable. You want them to meet other people in the class. So throughout the week, mixing them up is a good idea. So.
Right. All right, so here's a traditional classroom. So what are some good things about this classroom setup? Mary, what do you think? What are some good things about this classroom setup?
Well, you can have a lot of people,
Squished in there.
Yeah.
It's all squished in.
Just
because there's nothing.
Everyone can see, okay? There's some
right, everyone can see. Sometimes we start up.
Sorry. Figured out the mouse to stuff.
Where'd you go?
I went backwards.
There we go.
So we have some people chatting on here. So let's see. John says sometimes he starts off with the activity that mixes up the class, and that's a great idea. I mean, that's have you ever had where people have a dot on their seat, or they get a dot when they come in, and then you put, this is the blue dot table, this is the yellow dot table, and then Ed says there's nothing really good about this arrangement, and I think sometimes we can agree. If you have a big, like sometimes you have auditorium seating, there's not a lot you can do if you're stuck with that. But one of the things as trainers I think we need to kind of start thinking about is this is an easy way to not have a lot of interaction with your class. So you want to be careful about going with this because it's so, you know, strict school, the old-fashioned way, and you don't get, yeah, everyone always sits in the back. Yeah, you never have the front row filled up.
I always say that, too. I know all the troublemakers are back there in the back. I'm keeping my eye on you guys.
Oh, yeah, and, you know, inevitably, if we're having like let's say a communicable disease class, which you have every year.
Favorite.
Yeah, you have the people not only in the back, they probably have their sunglasses on, which we have to tell them to take off. I mean, they're doing everything because they're, you know, you're kind of setting yourself up for that response,
right?
In having the table set like that. But you know what? If you have a big class and you have little room, you can really shove a lot of people in that way.
Right. All right. So here's the next one. There you go. So this is a small group configuration. What do you guys like about this?
Good for, Julie says, good for activities.
Right.
And interactions, yep, that's good. In this setting, you have, it's really set for interactive activities. You're set up already if you're going to have like a little game or something and you want to separate them into groups. Discussion groups, exactly. This is a real, and as you're talking about chevrons, this is pretty close to that setup. To create that environment that it's real easy for everyone to see, et cetera. And one of the key things, too, is you want to make sure those tables are set up so people can sit really sort of sideways to see the front when you're talking to the class, so everybody has a good angle to see the podium. And our line at the top is where you know, project.
Like the screen is?
Yeah, that's where the screen is. But you want to have them have easy access to that, but easily also to the table and that group discussion. So you bring them to the front easily, but very easily go right back to the group discussion. Right. And it makes it easier in some of the other forms that we have. This is really conducive to that small group. You know, what do they say that the other groups can't listen to as easily when you're maybe in some other setups. Like if you go back to the classroom, you know, it's real hard to set up even groups where, okay, you two turn around and, you know, it becomes real awkward with getting those groups together.
So what are some bad things about this setup?
Once again, what are some bad things about this set, or are there any bad things about this setup? Oh, can lead to sidebar conversations.
Big time.
Yep, yep. You do have to, oh, you know what, you have to be careful that they don't start off with a sidebar before they even get into the activity. So you do have to have a lot of roaming around and monitoring the group.
And if your classroom is big enough, this is easy to roam around in. You can kind of go in and out between the tables. It's kind of good. But if your classroom is kind of small, then it's squishy. You know what I mean? And trying to get in and out in between those tables can be difficult, you know?
So that can be one of the drawbacks of this. It kind of takes up more room than the other models.
All right, this configuration is one of our favorite for specialized courses because of the ability of, you know, to be interactive and have discussions. So let me go on to the next one here. This happens to be my favorite. I love setting up a classroom this way. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like this setup draws me out from behind the podium, and I'm like almost, I don't want to say forced, but really more able to walk through that U shape and have a personal interaction with every single participant in the classroom. So that's what I feel as far as the good things about this. Is there any drawbacks to having this set up? You can tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly about this one. What do you guys think? We're watching chat as you guys. That seems to be the easiest way to communicate. You chat with us and we'll less interaction.
Good point, Ed. Less interaction, and if you go back to the groups before, you're facing each other.
Right. It's
awkward in that sideways group, or right. where maybe you have the numbers that you have to have that corner person and they never feel right. Included, or you have to move your chairs and go around to the other side. It can become, so yeah, it can have limited interaction in the smaller group. It can have really good interaction in that everyone can see everybody talking, but it's limited in that smaller group interaction, which sometimes, if you have a large pole in the middle of the room, that could be a problem too.
You know, I actually taught in a class down in Douglas where there was a pole. If you look to the right side of the U, right where that green line is, there was a pole right there, and I can't tell you how many times I backed into that thing. So yeah, it can be really, yes, that can be a problem. What else?
Groups work better socially and will achieve consensus faster. That's true. And once again, those smaller groups
right.
get people talking, especially, you know, when we go into like personalities, et cetera, you know, the E's and the I's. Your I's love the last group, the smaller group tables, as opposed to this one where I would have to talk to everyone and be ready. E's probably love it, you know, they're the extroverts, and, you know.
Of course. So this setup is not real good for a large class, and I'm going to show you a photo here in a little bit that shows you how this U-shaped classroom went really, really bad. So we'll talk about that in just a second, but this is really good for small groups, okay? So what's next? Let's talk a little bit about introduction and ground rules. So talk to me a little about what do you guys think makes the first 5 minutes so critical when you're giving a presentation?
Getting buy-in.
Getting buy-in from the participants. So yeah, that's
you gotta hook them quick.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sets the tone for the day. Very
sure
good,
does.
Stephanie. That's a good point.
What else? Okay, so the first 5 minutes, yep, you want to grab the participants' attention. This is where you're going to motivate your participants. You're going to explain the importance of what is to be learned. They need to know that they're there for a good reason. Participants get to know you, and you get to know your participants. And it's important for adult learners to know why they are in class and how it pertains to their job.
And as you see there with like motivating the class, doing all these different things, it goes right back to what Stephanie, I believe, said with getting that buy-in. Why am I here? If I can get them right then with some of this, in this first 5 minutes, grab their attention, explain the importance, get them to realize that I've got them, and that I'm hopefully going to keep them interacting.
Right.
And John brings up a good point. This is where you probably do icebreakers to set that tone.
Right. We're going to talk about, John, did you write this? But seriously, we're going to go right into that right now. All right, so it's important to include everything on this slide in the first 5 minutes because that's where every individual sitting in your class forms their own opinion about about the course, okay? So what are some things that you can do? John already mentioned it, an icebreaker. What are some icebreakers that you can do that will capture the audience? What's your favorite icebreaker to do, John?
My favorite icebreaker to do is one to get to know people, where you have them say their names, and a cartoon character that you know, basically exhibits their personality. So if you like the Tasmanian devil, because I'm just running around doing everything, that's one of my favorites. Oh, people bingo. That's a good one.
Awesome. Telling a story, especially a personal story.
Ah.
Somebody else out. Oh, you guys are really going now. I like bingo. I recently did one with what? Where people were stranded on an island.
And they could pick a clothing item, a luxury item, and a book. It was fun to, that's
a good one.
I throw the yarn ball around to say names and what they do, and then have them throw it back as the person who threw it, and tells them how their jobs and how they're connected. Oh, I like that.
That's a good one. And so the yarn unrolls as you throw it, and then by the time you're done, you see how everybody's job is interconnected with the yarn, right? Who was that?
Was that Stephanie?
Nice. Nice, 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 nice. Okay.
Yep, it's a lot of fun. Oh, name the movie, name the sport, name the product, and save these for lunch. Oh.
After lunch when everybody's asleep, right?
Well, you know what, that's a good one, Ed. Isn't that the one where, like, you try to pick whose favorite movie is this, so it's a way to kind of figure out other people. It's a good way to come back from breaks, come back from lunch, and get them back into the swing of things.
Right. Nice. All right, so some of the things that I have listed here are to capture the audience, play a review game, especially if it's a class that they have to take over and over year after year, like sexual harassment is done every year, communicable disease is done every year, PREA is done every year. So a review game is a good way to go. Ask a thoughtful question. We did that at the beginning of this course. Tell me what you think we should talk about today, and in most cases, we do cover everything that the participants bring up. It's nice to take notes at the beginning when they're answering that, so that you can ensure that you do cover everything that they want to talk about. Conduct a demonstration. You can tell a story. I think somebody actually mentioned that in chat. Tell a story. And use humor. Humor is cool, but humor is a double-edged sword. You got to be very careful, because if you happen to have a topper in your class, you guys know what toppers are, right? Somebody who has to be wittier than you, has to be more knowledgeable than you, has to be funnier. And if you say something funny, a lot of times these toppers think it's like that's the green light to just throw out any humorous story that they may have heard, you know, on the comedy channel. So you got to be real careful about that, okay? So participants need to know what's with them. They need to know what's in it for them. You need to make sure that you clarify that in the beginning, and then you will have the buy-in. I think, was it Ed? Stephanie said that you have to get their buy-in, okay? So next you want to do introduction and ground rules. All right, why are ground rules so important? What do you think? Why are ground rules so important? Maintain control. Absolutely. Was that Ed?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You're absolutely right.
And pretty much everybody's sitting there
saying the same thing, right? So before you do your ground rules, you want to give a brief bio. What's the importance of a brief bio? Do you need to relay your credibility to the class? Absolutely. I think that's the most important thing. I'm here trying to watch the chat too. I need to pay attention to what I'm doing. Sorry,
exactly.
folks. As a trainer for our agency, there are a few courses that I don't teach. You're not going to see me out there doing self-defense. You won't see me doing firearms, okay? You won't, but just about everything. And just because I've been around for as long as I have, I can teach just about anything. Do you think that an executive, think about your executives in your agency, can they teach any class? What do you guys think about that?
Alyssa said no, and Ed was even bolder with his no.
Was he? No, not just no, but uh-oh. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Executives can do maybe some really great leadership programs but it seems like if it's a class, let's say communicable disease prevention, you're not going to want your executive doing that unless that is their area of expertise, okay? You're going to want maybe somebody who's an occupational health nurse or a safety officer or maybe even a trainer who's done the class over and over again, all right? So when you talk about housekeeping, what are you gonna include? You guys remember what Julie included in the housekeeping earlier? She talked a little bit about the raising your hand, muting your phone. That's significant with a webinar, but in your classroom, you're going to make sure you want to talk about where the bathrooms are, the all-important coffee if it's provided, and schedule and breaks. And you want to make sure people silence their cell phones. So going back to the ground rules, this is important in classes all the time, but especially important in discussions that can stir up different reactions. Sexual harassment, professionalism, and leadership, those are the things that come to mind right off the bat. So tell me, what rules do you think should be in a classroom? Go ahead and type them in and we'll read them out.
Ed did make a good, or not, John made a good point on the other thing with housekeeping, how to get out if there's a problem.
How to get out if there's a problem. Oh, like fire exit,
yep.
Right? Okay, that's important.
Where to meet, you know,
yeah.
You met from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, asking questions. Ground rules. Okay, so for ground rules, you want asking questions to be there? That's a good one. I like that. Vegas rules, what said here stays in here. Respect, breaks, yeah.
Put away those phones, yep.
Ask 3 before me.
What does that mean? Who is that, Ed?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what ask 3 before me means.
Ask 3 other people, then ask me.
Interesting. Respect everyone's input. That's very important. All right, some of the things that I have: respect, confidentiality, participate, and have fun. What does that say? That's right. Ask 3 people.
Ask 3 people in the group, especially if you're in those little groups before you ask them, the instructor, because they probably do know the answer. You bring up a really good point, Ed.
Right.
So you know, one of the things with respect that a lot of you added is there's more than just to respect. There's like respect of time. So like when you're talking about breaks, respect of other people's opinions, and respect of, well, what's the other one? Well, those are the 2.
Personal space?
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, so so you guys have done these ground rules before. Do you always ask the participants to come up with the rules? I think it's important if you don't that you do that, because then as a presenter you can always refer back to them and say, you know, you guys came up with these rules. Number 2, look at number 2, be respectful, you know, that kind of thing. Sometimes they can come up with some crazy rules like the presenter buys lunch or we end 3 hours early. So you don't want to discourage rules, but you need to make sure that they are reasonable with the rules that they set up.
Ed, you're exactly right in your comment. The reason why you want them to make the rules is they're more likely to enforce them if they made them.
Absolutely.
And then as part, and you as the instructor, at the end say, well, those are great rules you came up with, and if there's a crazy rule, like let's say instructor buys lunch, instead of, I say, I can understand you wanting that, but how about instructor will allow for a lunch break? You know, so we make it so it's more reasonable. But the other thing with that is you put your rules at the end, like the respect, the confidentiality, participate, have fun, so that you're just as much a part of that group that day as they are, and you have some rules that you want to make sure. So when you're getting the buy-in from the others, You're also having them really buy into what you need to have as the facilitator, you know, to keep control.
Alrighty. So, respect confidentiality, participate, and have fun. I think throwing have fun up there on the list is really good because a lot of times people walk in to the classroom with a big chip on their shoulder that, oh my God, I have to be here and I don't want to be here. So once you give them permission to have fun, then maybe they'll actually smile and not be so frustrated with the fact that they need to be in training. If you take a look at the photo on this slide, this is the U-shaped classroom gone terribly wrong. I think the intention was good in the beginning, but if you look at the outside, there's a row of people on either side of the U, and the U is so squished in that the instructor, the facilitator, couldn't get in there to have one-on-one contact with the people sitting in the U if they wanted to. So there may be more space for them to walk on the outside of the U, but I don't think this was what the intention was for this particular course. So that was the picture that I talked to you about a little bit earlier that I would show you. So next one is attitude. What are your thoughts on attitude in a presentation? I believe someone brought it up earlier. Was it Alyssa that brought it up, or was it Stephanie that brought it up, talking about a facilitator that's not motivated?
Yeah.
So what do you think about attitude in a presentation, your attitude of your facilitator?
I love that. Enthusiasm is infectious.
It is. You're absolutely right, Ed. I take a few minutes before I have to instruct, and Mary actually witnessed it today. I take a few minutes to just sit down and clear my mind and put myself in the zone, is what I call it, because you need to take everything that is in the outside world and leave it there for a few minutes when you give your presentation. It's still going to be there when you get done. You can handle it when you're out of the class, but when you're in the class, you have to make sure that your mind is exactly where it needs to be, because all of your participants feel it, you know, and it can affect whether your presentation is good or bad. So, a positive attitude. All right, so, no, I heard noise on the phone. I was wondering if somebody was going to talk. All right, so a positive attitude. We're taught that if we have a positive attitude in the class, that we have a positive attitude, we can do anything, all right? So if I go on a golf course today and I have a positive attitude that I'm going to hit a hole-in-one, I'm confident and I'm positive that I'm going to do it, but I'm not a golfer. Do you think I'm going to do it? Probably not. Probably not. So for golf, you have to actually have some skills and some athletic ability. I don't have those skills, nor the strength to hit the ball far enough. Fortunately, presenting skills are not like those of golfing, and you can do better with a positive attitude. So there are a lot of different styles among world-class speakers, but one thing they all have in common is that they give off the sense that they absolutely love speaking to the audience on the topic, and they're good at it. You need to go into every presentation with the attitude that you're going to nail it, you're going to be great, and you're going to really communicate the message that you want to communicate, and you will accomplish your goals. You must convey this with every part of your body, your voice, your eyes, your energy. You may not be perfect, but the participants are far more likely to pick up on the positive attitude than they are a minor stumble or a mistake. All right, so how do you convey this positive attitude when you're presenting on a topic? Just if you don't agree with the topic. I'm sure at some point in your career you guys have had to present a topic that you didn't particularly agree with, but you had to sell it, right? So how did you go about doing that? How did you go about selling it, creating that positive attitude? What do you do, Mary?
Well, I always go in with a smile. I mean, there's once again the classes that we talk about that you have to do, you know, OSHA says communicable disease, and it's like, oh, do I have to teach that one? Right. You know, that's how you feel. But when you go in, I do my little psych myself up like Dawn was saying, and I say, hey, this is so important to you. I mean, I get that first 5 minutes, and I actually get myself motivated of why I need to be here and be positive about it. Stephanie wrote, remember that you're presenting for the agency. Stick with the lesson plan and remove personal opinions and thoughts about the topic. Good point. One of the other things I talk to a lot of people about is if you're questioning why we're doing it, ask the question that you know someone's going to ask that you're dreading. And, you know, get that information beforehand so you're not saying, well, I don't know why we have to do it, you know, which is going to turn someone off. Also, if you think about it, keeping your facial expressions, if you're up there rolling your eyes, and you know what, I just did that. I bet you could tell I could do it even though you couldn't see it. It's conveyed through your tone of voice and other things. If you're positive, that comes across as well. Ed had make eye contact with everyone, walk among them, ask your open-ended questions. Yeah, exactly. Okay. You do those things, and you know what, a lot of times that brings you around, getting the eye contact from people.
All right, very good. Very good. So interaction.
Eye connect. Okay.
Okay. So interaction. I think it's important that it's important to remember that you are teaching adults. You're not teaching school-age children. We all know about adult learning, and we know that they need to be able to apply these experiences in the classroom back to their jobs, all right? So what are some major differences between children and teaching adults? All right, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the fundamental drivers for learning when it comes to adults. Okay, do we got somebody? Adults already have attitudes, beliefs, and experiences. Yes. You're absolutely right about that. Is that it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ed.
Oh, children tend to take your word for it. Adults may question everything you say, what you are discussing and more.
Absolutely. You can tell kids that you can tell kids that the sky is purple, and they'll go, really? Is it lavender or is it deep purple? Whereas with adults, they'll go, no, that's blue, because they know it's blue. So you're right. Absolutely right about their experiences. Perfect. All right, so 4 fundamental drivers for learning. You need to use real-world examples and simple things like using their names. You know, if you don't know their names, have them use name tense. It means a lot to a person to hear their name in a classroom. It feels personal to them, all right? When you expose your participants to job-related challenging experiences, they're not going to feel like they're wasting their time in your training, okay? So another thing that we need to make sure that they have is an opportunity to practice. The classroom is the safest place to make mistakes. So by giving your participants the opportunity to try new procedures or refresh old ones, you give them a safe place to make mistakes, to get clarification and redirection, and then to try it again.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of people really complain about role plays, but usually we find at the end of the day, being able to make the mistake there in the classroom, as Don was saying, through a role play, was so much better than making the mistake out in the work site.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another thing that you can do for them is give them the opportunity to participate in conversations and networking. Sometimes training can feel like a family reunion. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed that, but folks come back to training and, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you since we were at the training academy. They love catching up with people that they haven't seen in ages. Using small group activities as well as ample breaks gives them time to do this. A lot of times you can go outside during your breaks and you can hear the conversations that they're having out there, and that gives you something when you bring them back in from their breaks to actually open up the class again and start talking about, hey, I heard you guys talking on the break about blah, blah, blah. And then they're more apt to get right back into what you were talking about right after a break. Space for reflection. That sounds a little touchy-feely, but the honest truth is that you need to give them time to reflect on what they've learned, and the opportunity to take the tips and tricks that you presented to them, and they can put it in their mind. You know how Mary said that while she's taking a shower, she's thinking about how she's going to do. They do the same thing. They play the what-if game, and they take the ideas that you gave them in class and apply them to their jobs. So what are some ways that you can do these things in class? Any one of these, the last 4 bullets.
I give the example of role plays. They're my favorite.
Right. You know. There we go.
Okay, Ed, how can you use what you just learned and apply it on the job? So, very good.
Question.
Interactive questioning. And yeah, you should always, whenever you're giving like an analogy or drawing a blank on the word, but like a simulation or whatever, how does it apply to the real world or back to the job site? Mm-hmm. Very good. It's one of my favorite questions to ask.
Exactly. So, you already covered that. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is controlling your class. What are some of the problems that cause a class to get out of control?
Let's see, one of my favorite things for sidebars.
Sidebar conversations, yep.
Instructors taking a disagreement personally. So now you're arguing with the class. I love it, Ed. That is a huge problem.
Yep.
And you know what? You can always say we need to agree to disagree and move on.
How about those folks that refuse to participate? Absolutely refuse.
Someone jokes about something. Yeah, especially something that shouldn't be joked about.
Right.
Once again, you go back to the sexual harassment class and you have inappropriate jokes happening during it.
Right.
Co-instructors argue with each other in front of the class.
Agreed.
Oh, we were going to model that today, but we decided not to. But Stephanie, that's a really good point.
It is a good point. Yep.
And then, you know what, and with co-facilitating, you really need to have someone you do feel comfortable with that won't happen. Sometimes you know, oh, I don't want to instruct with that person because we tend to disagree too much, and that can become a problem. Very good. You guys have some really good ones.
Right. So
have the shy work in duos or triads. I like that.
Good idea.
Yep.
Yeah, there's some people that just can't stand to be called on in class, right? Like you can tell them right off the bat when you do, you know, just have a conversation with them, either welcoming them to the class or maybe they have to introduce themselves, and they're like that really shy, introverted person. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Ed. That's a good idea. So some of the things that we came up with for this presentation was people who talk out of turn. We have problems with folks dominating the class, sidebar conversations, which Mary mentioned, folks refusing to participate, indifference, lack of motivation, sleeping. Sometimes we have people who work all night long and then they're told they have to go to training all day after they get off shift, which is insane. And sometimes they have to adjust their schedule. Maybe they didn't work the night before, but they're used to working at night, so now you're asking them to stay awake in the middle of their night. So, you know, keeping that in mind can be helpful. And then cell phones. Some executives may need to have their cell phones in class. So what do you do if it's a disruptive?
Have people in the group take turns, make the monopolizer scribe for the flip chart. I like that.
I love doing that. Oh, yep. You want the center of attention? Here, come up here and write.
I do like that also. Not everybody is going to be, not the same spokesperson, so you have groups take turns so that allows for different people to have an opportunity to talk or represent or whatever. walk near and sidebar and stop the talking.
Absolutely. Sometimes just being in their zip code shuts them right up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, we've been had.
Yeah. She's right here. She's right here. All right. So some of the solutions, you can speak to them one-on-one during a break. One of the most important things that's not, I don't think it's on here, is to go back to the ground rules. If they're breaking the rules, point them out. These are the rules you made. I think Ed said that. You make the rules, you let them make the rules, they're more likely to follow them, right?
And they're more likely to police them.
Right.
In other words, before you have to say something, someone in the class says something.
Yeah, someone else says, shh, 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 yeah. You can speak to the person one-on-one. I said that. You can move in their direction. I think somebody said that.
Yep.
And involve them in the class. You guys also mentioned that. You can give them a brief warning, and then you can concentrate on the participants that actually want to learn, right? So once again, setting the ground rules is one of the best techniques, and the whole class then works on keeping the class on track. Alrighty. So are there any questions on anything that we've covered so far? All right, so preparation is what? Very good so far? Okay, right on. So preparation is very important, probably the most important to a great presentation. You need to make sure that you review your lesson plan until you are comfortable enough with the information. I realize that sometimes you can't. That is one of the downfalls of being in the business we're in. Sometimes you don't get the opportunity to do that, but if you do have the opportunity, make sure that you go over it so that you can present the information as effectively as possible. You want to make sure you check your equipment, your videos, and your supplies to ensure that you have everything that you need and it's all in working order. Be sure to check the thermostat. Again, that may sound kind of strange, but it can really ruin a training for somebody who's sitting there freezing in class. Make sure that you use the first 5 minutes to go over the ground rules for the class and introduce yourself to the group and get to know the participants a little bit. You want to capture the audience with interactive activities. Be sure to convey a positive attitude. Be aware of your body language, your tone, and your energy. You want to make sure that you're expressing the right attitude. Remember to interact with your participants. Use real-world experiences. Give them the opportunity to practice in the classroom. Allow time for conversations and networking, and give them time to reflect on what they've learned. Don't forget that it's your job to control the class. Set the rules in the beginning and refer to them during the class when necessary. Control the folks that seem to be trying to take over by involving them in the class. Walk in their direction. Remember, just being in close proximity can stop their inappropriate behavior. Don't be afraid to give a brief warning if necessary, and talk to them on the breaks if needed. Don't lose sight of the folks that are there to learn. You can always focus on them. So, any questions? Any comments?
We really appreciate all the interaction we have had. You guys, actually, I'm excited. You gave some, especially with the icebreakers, you guys gave some really good examples of different things to use. And that's sometimes why you come here, too, why you go to a training. You're going to learn something. And as the instructor, keep that in mind, too. You'll probably learn something from every class you teach. Absolutely. If nothing more, it's how, you know, the latest gossip out somewhere. You're going to, you know, you put in what you give, so, or get out what you put in.
I really appreciate you guys using the chat feature, too. That seems to work a little bit easier than the hand-raising feature, so thank you for that.
This was fun for our first webinar. So.
All right. So I wish I could type faster. Ed, you did fine. Julie, do you have anything you need to add?
Oh, thanks, John. We enjoyed having you.
I appreciate everyone attending. Great job, Arizona. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to create this presentation and present. And for all those on the phone, again, we encourage you to keep your eye out for the remainder webinars, and the next one will be hosted June 29th.
And tell a friend.
Yes. Well, thank you, Alyssa, for all your comments. Ed, John, Stephanie, it's actually been fun.
Yeah, it's been a good time. Thank you very much.